Octave Rising.
Okay. Happy February 8th, 2025. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. It's Justine and Zane. It's getting so predictable and boring. We promise we'll have other people joining soon. It's just such a boring convenience move when you live in the same house. There is so much happening in the world right now, and it feels like a really appropriate time to go ahead and kind of chime in, I think, with our perspective, really with the frequencies that we were trained into, shown, I would say, in South Africa through the amazing cleanse process. You know, so much of our conditioning in this world is to look outside of ourselves, you know, and humans have done that through the ages. It's I think it relates possibly even to some of that early Anunnaki genetic modification that took place, looking for leaders, looking for events that are happening out in the external world and using those to basically validate our own existence or our own internal experience. This era, sorry, your kitty's freaking out, which is awesome. This era is about flipping that script. It's really about finding our own inner channel, the voice of the true mind, the blueprints that we're all encoded with, the crystalline light source that flows through from the creator through a specific diffraction pattern and becomes the crystalline whole, the rainbow body that is a unique snowflake for each and every one of us. And that's, of course, what the cleanse and medicine work is all about, opening. So, you know, in this moment where there's so much external noise and chatter in every direction, we're fortunate to know people kind of coming from every direction, people who we really love and respect too. People who would say that everything in politics right now is a psyop. People who would say that everything in politics right now means we are guaranteed a perfect future and we don't necessarily have to do anything because it's going to come to us. I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle, as it often is. And ultimately, the part that matters the most is not what we see out there, but it's the degree to which we can claim our own sovereignty in the midst of all this chaos and own the process of creation. And, you know, the way that works, ultimately, we're projectors. And so we are responsible for the reality that we see reflected in the material world because it is literally being projected from an encodement of energy into physical perceptual reality. So how to manage this moment? Do you have anything you want to riff on that at all? Or, no, not really.
Not yet.
So backing up a little bit, the name of this podcast, New Octave Rising. The new octave came into my awareness shortly after my first cleanse in South Africa. And it came in a very sneaky way. I thought that I had heard it mentioned, maybe by Zelkia or somebody, or Rhoda, or I don't know who, but I kind of started asking questions about it and realized that it had come from somewhere else. I'm sure I've heard it referenced somewhere at some point in time because people do talk about new octaves. But what it meant to me, and this took a minute to sort of synthesize in my consciousness. It took place over months. The new octave is a universal architectural upgrade that's incoming. And it is a creative wave, a creative impulse that is propagated from the center of creation, from source, through the entire field of creation. And when it hits Earth, and when Earth goes through a liberation process, and we're starting to see the front end of that. I think we have been for a while, but we're really seeing it ramp up, because with any wave, there's sort of a compression in front of the actual impact of the wave. And we're feeling that energy incoming. When this planet gets liberated, the living library, or the interstellar, intergalactic database that this planet is, triggers a shift in the structure of consciousness itself that then ripples through every other living system that's quantumly entangled with the Earth. And so, put in other language, that means the matrix falls not just here, but everywhere. And if you followed at any point some of our other discussions, perhaps you have a bit of a baseline framework for how vast this AI inverted infiltration is. Recently, I've been feeling like it's, to some degree, it's infiltrated our whole universe. The part where it's really extreme is just one quadrant of that universe. And I think when we read texts that refer to the fall, or fallen angels, anything of that nature, it's referring to the quadrant that we are currently embodied in. Many of us have come from very, very far away in order to help shift and heal this system. And so, in order for that to be done comprehensively, we have to first release the architecture by which that inversion anchors into these fallen systems. Please.
So there's a couple things in there that I would love to share about, and I think I'll pick up with architecture that you just mentioned, and we've talked about this before as well, but one of those main structures that are in our field is the mental body. And I think it really illustrates the point that Zane was making earlier of somewhere in the middle with these kind of polarized lenses of, well, this is the worst thing or this is the best thing. And, with the current political situation. And one thing that keeps coming up is, of course, especially in our community, the idea of disclosure. And disclosure is a story. It is a construct that interacts with the mental body. And it's something that is also attached to the ego, because then the ego gets to say, I'm right. Look at me. I've been right all along, and you guys have been in the dark, and now you're in the light. And a big part of the mental body deconstructing is that healing process, the inner awakening to the heart. And what the heart realizes in this moment is that perpetuating suffering cannot be part of this new wave of creation. Suffering is not part of the new octave. And I truly do believe that disclosure for some people will generate more suffering. And while it is happening and we are in this moment of tremendous awakening and people waking up to reality, forced mental body engagement with stories is an architecture that is being deconstructed. And so as we look towards this solar maximum year and these moments of energetic bursts and expressions and people awakening, it's important to remember that the awakening process comes from the heart and is within the heart. And so much of our recalibration is actually around feeling and resensitizing ourselves to feeling and letting go of the stories. Those of us who are aware of these stories, we have held them so that people can move through this without greater suffering. And that lends to the other idea to share, which is, and this has been talked about it, we've talked about it, Zane has articulated it in beautiful ways, of the beings that have been here before us, and this is a moment of gratitude and validation, just by being here have opened the portal, the energy for us to be able to step into what we're here to do. And then us in turn being here opens up the energy for others. And so much of what we're doing is just being the leading edge of the flock and creating a draft. We're not all necessarily meant to reconstruct everything or even deconstruct everything. Our being here does so much of that, and our own ability to create the things that we've created and create what we are going to create here in our lives is because others have come before us and opened up that energy field to recalibrate what's available to humanity. And so as we look at the architecture that we're simultaneously breaking down on the synthetic timeline and simultaneously building up on the organic timeline, it's important to remember that so much of what you might be doing is impacting a group of people that don't know you, that likely will never know you, and may never say thank you with your name attached to it. But you doing that and having the ideas that you have, those creative ideas are seated in the collective. And so as we discuss this moment of incredible creation and re-merging with our organic creator selves, dream it up. And someone else may build it, and it's the ego that goes, that was my idea, what do you mean? Or, oh, someone's already done it, so it must not be that great. No, wow, I brought that in so that this other part of me, this other part of the planetary being, the solar system being, the galactic being, can express it because we are connected in that way.
Beautifully said. Yeah, thank you. I think that was probably a lot more clearly articulated than the preamble, but yeah, hopefully putting things in context a little bit here. I had an amazing conversation last night with a friend here, Chris Pieper, talking about all the happenings in government right now. And it's valid, you know, for Americans especially who have been disappointed so many times by the political establishment. It's valid to be excited. There's nothing wrong with excitement. But where the situation gets inverted is when we start to feel we derive our power from these external figureheads. What if we instead thought of them as the sort of reality field's reflection of our collective consciousness? And that's sort of the point I was attempting to make to Chris, is all of these people in the political arena doing things that we've never seen done before, calling out situations that we've never seen called out. That's because the human collective is awake enough at this point that it's demanded. And we're propagating the wave of reality that's resulting in those figureheads who supposedly hold power and have held power over other human beings in the past. We're seeing them forced to move in new directions and to address things that previously they could just continually push under the carpet and, get out of the way and then go on with their shenanigans. We are responsible for this planet shifting. Nobody else is. And because we've been conditioned into such a materialistic lens in this world, we think that results come from political or economic decisions or, these kind of predictable material avenues, technology. This is an energetic, holofractal projection. It's pure consciousness at one level. Material reality in general is a very late stage development in the expansion of the creator's consciousness, in the willful division of the creator's consciousness. And so to reference material reality for a change taking place is truly backwards, because this change is propagating from the center of creation. It's propagating from source. And so it is our collective energy waves that are combining and refracting and bouncing through this perceived planetary system that's actually resulting in new levels of organization, which we haven't previously seen. And so I think, per Justine's point, when we talk about disclosure, I know that I went through a time in my awakening where I would play podcasts or lectures or interviews or whatever it was whenever I had a chance, because it reminded me of another reality that is not the superficial consensus reality. And I would feel myself shifting between different perspectives. On the one hand, going and sitting at the computer or going and shooting video or whatever it was, feeling very much in the matrix and kind of the mundane grind of daily life. And then when I would listen to these other things, it would reawaken this multidimensional aspect. And that's where my real inspiration would start to come in. The thing is, at this point, I kind of have a hard time doing it because I realize that I'm being programmed every time I play somebody else's information. It doesn't mean that there's not amazing stuff out there and amazing things happening. But, anymore I'm trying to listen with my heart, as Justine was talking about, as opposed to with my mind, because the result is immediate. When there's truth and real information coming through and it's carried on a dimensional thread from a higher power or higher consciousness, it results in inspiration. I feel it in my field almost like this scintillating kind of ecstatic bubbling up, and it's very internal. I love that feeling more than anything else in this world. I wish I could live in it at every moment. And so, that's kind of become my new filter and reference for whether the content I'm consuming is reinforcing that. But frankly, that experience comes through in all sorts of aspects of life these days. It might be in the sauna. It might be at the beautiful hot springs we just spent 4 days at. It might be in the middle of a conversation with somebody where you really click into a rhythm and a clarity. It might be a piece of music or a piece of artwork or being out in nature. So just to say, there are so many different ways to bring that frequency into our creation field that are not accessed via the mental body. And being wary of the mental body. I mean, that it's such an understatement to even say being wary. The mental body was installed into our bodies. It's actually it's a bypass circuit. It removes the energetic flow out of its natural organic blueprint. And instead of being able to process however many billions of bits of information per second, we're dumbed down to a tiny fraction of that. And I'm sorry, I don't have the actual data for the speed of our conscious versus subconscious minds, but it's a drastic difference. It doesn't mean we can't use it to navigate this world, but it should be used in tandem with the feeling centers. I think that's what we're all being taught in our own various ways in our various life experience. And, very much as part of this leading wave of the awakening of humanity, those of us who have been awake for some time or are still, very quickly moving through our awakening process, we're doing so much more than we realize. And so we shouldn't relegate our efficacy in shifting this planet to what we can put down on paper or show materially. Like how many of us in America I hear people idolizing someone like Elon Musk and it's like, well, I mean, the guy literally just used his money to create a reputation for himself that had massive, far-reaching, networks of influence to the point where he could literally create a persona that people then begin to believe in and idolize. And meanwhile, there are beings on the planet who have literally averted so many catastrophic timelines. I mean, so many hell realms, so many incredibly dark outcomes that have held the original blueprints of this planet intact through every attack on this system. And they're never going to be mentioned by name, just like Justine said. So being in a body on Earth, there's a very technical reason for why we choose to do that. And it's because being embodied here in this system gives us a consensual pathway to unwind many of these, really all of these inverted systems that have been anchored here.
Just real quick to say that in another way, when we have a body, we have permission to act on this system directly. And with the whole, starseed waves and beings, our star brothers and sisters who are holding space for us, they are holding space for us. And yes, there will be a moment, we don't know when there can be more direct lines of communication, but right now the most direct line is to incarnate in a physical form. And so when we do that, it's just saying it in a different way. We have permission to create directly in the system and to break things down directly in the system. And that's why so many of us are here in a body, because that enables us to really interact with this realm.
Yeah, and to process things through the body is it's the amazing thing that Rhoda and Zilkia have brought to this planet. I mean, it's the breakthrough beyond all breakthroughs, to realize that through the physical vessel you can collapse entire massive multi-dimensional reality chains of inverted architecture and process it through your physical colon, release it, and it is cleared out of every single one of those infiltrated systems in one comprehensive act. That's the magic of physical incarnation, at least in terms of kind of the primary mission here for the moment, which is to clear this place so that it can be re-inhabited by its birthright consciousness, by organic consciousness again. It's interesting because at the end of the day, the only reason why Justine and I are even engaged in this, little podcast and in the work that we've now been shown is because there were beings here on earth in the physical who were able to reflect back to us our own greatness and our own capacity to shift these systems and the magnitude of effect that we have on this planet simply by living, no matter what we do, just living here in a body. And again, returning to this concept of wanting to externalize our experience, to seek external validation. I've been watching myself try to do it around the matrix and the AI architecture, looking for books, looking for affirmation anywhere I can find it, as if what's come through me is not enough. And I think Justine speaks really beautifully.
Yeah, Zane said that the greatest gift of my life was receiving that validation from Matthew, from Rhoda and Zelkia, and really feeling acknowledged that, wow, you have something to bring through. And in a community of healers that is saturated with shamans and beings who channel angels and talk to Pleiadians and can speak in tongues or light language, it's really important for you to remember that you have all of that as well. We are direct contact. We are first contact with Earth, and we might look human and sound human and act human a lot of the time. But I just want to offer that validation to anyone who's listening, that what you are here to bring through and the experiences that you have to share are as magical as anything that anybody out there is sharing. And we do try to seek that external validation, but take space for yourself to feel your own truth and know that it is real and that it is powerful and that it is here to change the world.
Yeah.
Did I do good? Was that it?
Yeah, that's totally it. And yeah, I mean, I guess nothing more really needs to be said, but ultimately we know where this ends, and it's in unity consciousness. And that's really not a hypothetical. That is the actual truth of the design of this universe. I mean, to the degree we're going to talk about architecture, that is the architecture of this creation. We are all aspects of one supremely loving intelligence, and we are all treasured to degrees that we cannot imagine by that one loving intelligence. And so being able to access that inner self-love for each and every one of us, that's the breakthrough that changes this world, that no amount of political, economic, social decisions could ever even come close to. So expand your reference to what's capable of flowing through your own channel and from your own heart. And that's how we land in the new earth together.
Yay!
Okay. Love you all.